Hi, my name is David Campt, and I'm one of the main people involved in the Listening to Trump's America project. I want to explain the purpose of the project, the vision of how the project will evolve, and your potential role in the project. The purpose of the project is to try to investigate two questions. One is, what is the main driver or drivers behind people's support of Donald Trump? And also, what is the role of race, issues around race within that? The second thing we're trying to investigate is, what are the impediments to better listening across ideological lines? Clearly, people all over the political map are trying to figure out what is going on with people's support of Donald Trump. He challenges both people on the left and on the right, and no matter what happens with the election, his supporters have been activated and these people are around, and so it is in the collective interest to understand what is the nature of that support. And the second issue, listening, most people would recognize that our culture has either evolved away from or never was a good listening culture, and if we're ever going to knit together a more effective political culture, we need to relearn and disseminate skills around listening. So that's the purpose. The vision of how this will evolve is, myself and some other senior facilitators have developed some materials to try to support people listening to Trump supporters of the same racial group, to try to listen in an open-minded way from people who listen to people who support Trump and are listened to by people who do not support Donald Trump, with the attempt to actually, as I said earlier, investigate what are the key characteristics of that support, and then secondly, what's the role that issues around race might be playing in that. This study, this examination, is somewhere in between the studies that journalists have done, where they might interview 10, 20, or 100 people or follow Trump supporters around for a while, versus what pollsters do, where they are doing depth on the phone for 50,000 people, something like that. This is in between. This is trying to get hundreds or maybe a few thousand people to have face-to-face encounters where Trump supporters are conveying their perspective about Mr. Trump. So the listeners will collect that data, also about the nature of listening. I'll say more about that in a second. But the idea is that these materials are tested on a reasonable number of people over a reasonable period. They're improved. There's a lot of feedback given that materials are improved, and then the project goes out to large networks of people excuse me, who are professional facilitators and who think of themselves as good listeners. In order to get a whole lot of people behind this project, we want to come to them with materials that have been tested. So your role, and I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this video, is to help with that initial testing of the materials. So my hope is that our mutual friend who has sent you this, it can encourage and support you, I can too, in finding some Trump supporters and doing this interview. I have an interview guide that's about 15 to 20 minutes, I estimate, and there's a data collection instrument afterwards that also takes about that time, maybe a little longer. And the idea is you go find Trump supporters and talk to a few of them, taking notes after your interview. We have two modes, I'm thinking, although I can only give so much guidance. One is strangers and the other is acquaintances. So strangers, I'm thinking that you go to DMV, you go to oil change shops, you go to laundromats in areas of your parts of your region that have potentially a lot of Trump supporters, and you roll up on people and maybe you invite them to, you buy them coffee, or maybe you don't, and you try to say you're doing this big project on listening, and would they be willing to participate. For the acquaintances, you're using social media or other networking strategies to try to find people and to explain to them what the project is. There is no need to not be transparent about it. We want to understand our fellow Americans and their support for this person who's emerged on the scene and taken the country by storm in a certain way. The last element of this, in addition to taking notes after your meeting, is to have a debrief session, which can happen on Skype, after you do a number of your interviews, how many you're going to do, 3, 4, 5, whatever, to talk to other people who've done this about their experience. One of my friends who's a leading social scientist says that as important as the project is, that debrief might be the most important thing, because we're trying to figure out how do people listen and what does it feel like for people to immerse themselves in a different ideology and then talk about it. So I will work with you to coordinate that either in person, locally, or on the phone. And then I would be very grateful for this and other people who've supported this project. And the idea is to try to scrub the materials and then go out by late September to large networks of people to see if we can get a little army of people to go out and talk to their fellow Americans who support Trump to try to figure out what's going on with that and what's going on with the process of listening. And who knows what might come out of the gathering of all that data. So the idea is you very quickly learn the materials, do the pre-test, give us feedback, we improve the materials, and then we're ready to go to national organizations so that by October, they can put it out to their membership and we can really see if we can get an army of people going out there and listening to Trump supporters and maybe even some press around this civic project. I'm very grateful for you taking the time to watch this video, and you can be in touch with me directly about this project, and thank you so much for your time.